great-grandmother had been here for 10 years, yet spoke no English. Oh, my gosh. 1930 census says Tomi's 3 times great-grandmother had been here for 41 years and still spoke German. She didn't speak English either. She doesn't even know her own history. She certainly doesn't know this country's history.
Well, there is a woman over the weekend who took it upon herself to research my family history in hopes of digging up some kind of a gotcha moment, a gotcha angle to validate illegal immigration and open borders. And what she found was really shocking, guys. She found that my family who came here in the 1800s from Norway and Germany, that they spoke Norwegian and German. Okay. And really what she did is prove that my family came here.
Tomi Lahren just aggressively attacked Sunny Hostin to the point where CNN considered suing for emotional harm, even though Sunny didn't bring a helmet. What began as a normal, arrogant confrontation escalated into a full-blown verbal demolition derby. What Tomi dug out from under the rug is unbelievable. Spoiler alert, leftist hypocrisy and dust bunnies weren't the only culprits. There are more plot twists and turns in this takedown than in a Kardashian wedding cake. So get ready to snack.
But what she was hoping to do was try to call me a hypocrite for believing in merit-based immigration. Again, she failed miserably. But this really isn't what she calls resistance genealogy. It's just another indication of Trump derangement syndrome. But I really am happy, though, that she has such a fascination with my family history, and I'm hoping that she will take on Elizabeth Warren's next.
Wow, that would be very interesting.
Sunny Hostin, the human version of a LinkedIn post that thinks it's changing the world, was just intellectually body-slammed by none other than Tomi Lahren, yes. The same Tomi who never saw a hot take she didn't want to burn on fire and pitched directly into a Fox News program. And Sunny? Her downfall was less akin to a graceful tumble than a Jenga tower erected from pious tweets and neutral political stances.
Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners.
Sunny Hostin, let's be honest, is the type to enter a room, feel the tension, and begin mentally practicing a speech nobody requested as a woman of color. She would declare, just before uttering a statement that would cause the entire audience to roll their eyes so violently that they almost pull a muscle. She is also the ruler of false anger and the Duchess of dramatic size.
Did you provide them with DNA, 23andMe? Because I cannot believe the detail on your background that they were able to get.
Well, I don't have to. She did all the research for me, so I'm sure my family is very appreciative.
What about Joy saying, though, what are your skills? It's beyond research. It is personal. It is mean.
Well, of course, this is classical Joy Behar, but I would like to ask Joy Behar what her skills are, because perhaps we could swap stories. I know I watch Joy, and she seems like a highly skilled lady, but for her to attack me, that's really interesting. Those in glass houses should not throw...
She essentially held up a mirror, and Sunny melted like she had just caught a glimpse of her own Met Gala outfit again. However, this wasn't just your typical word salad. Instead, Sunny and the other View hosts attempted to compete with Tomi, but ultimately stumbled over their own hypocrisy and heels that appear to have been taken from Target's self-importance collection. Tomi didn't even break a sweat.
About you that bothers him so much.
Well, it's not just me, it's anybody who advocates for merit-based immigration or has an issue with open borders. And again, just like you said, they don't seem to understand that we on the right believe in immigration. We understand that we are a nation of immigrants, and I am proud of my heritage. However, I do believe that the immigration crisis of today is apples to oranges from what it was in the 1800s, when immigrants came to this country legally, were documented, worked for themselves, asked for nothing, and built a life and a family. That has nothing to do with the illegal immigration crisis of today that we must deal with. But they don't want to acknowledge that.
As you can see, Sunny Hostin has centered her entire brand around being the View's intellectual, which is akin to having the sharpest fork in a drawer full of dull ones. Her plan is really simple. Use moral superiority as a weapon, sprinkle in some elitist contempt, and end with a tone that essentially reads, I read the Constitution once, so now I am a Constitution. The issue? It's like watching a goldfish attempt to explain astrophysics, only with more outrage and a lot more hair flips whenever someone asks her to genuinely support her arguments.
I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who
It all began when Sunny, who of course did, attempted to attack conservatives by portraying them as ignorant fury muffins. She basically treats you like a caveman with a Twitter account if you're anywhere to the right of Bernie Sanders. Her entire plan was to snap her fingers and expect common sense to disappear, while sitting on the View couch like she was the Thanos of political beliefs. Whatever you want to say about Tomi, she arrived with evidence, receipts, and a cool-headedness that made Sunny's phony intellectual facade crumble like cheap acrylic nails. The fight wasn't even fair. Bringing a spoon to a knife battle was analogous to that Sunny's pompous argument turned out to be pointless. Her pride was nearly wheezing beneath the weight of the real evidence. And you could have used one of Sunny's overused catchphrases to break the tension when Tomi presented the receipts, because Tomi exposed the full Sunny Hostin persona, which combines theatrical activism and well-chosen outrage rather than just pointing out a small error or contradiction.
In the Obama years, it was a cattle call to come into this nation illegally. And furthermore, this is again the left's attempt at emotional blackmail. And I would just like to state, I don't know if they understand this or not, but if you don't want your family to be broken up when you cross the border illegally, here's an idea. Don't cross the border illegally. Then your family will surely stay together. I don't know why the left can't think of this, but they would rather try to tell us that we hate families, we want to break up families, we're horrible, we're despicable. No, we want to enforce federal...
Let's start with Sunny's best-known songs, in which she frequently preaches about democracy, freedom, and other such ideals, while also making the implication that anyone who disagrees with her shouldn't have a voice, a microphone, or, let's face it, even oxygen. Saying that free speech is only applicable if you pass this Sunny Hostin vibe test is the epitome of what it means to be a defender of democracy. Sunny is holding the invitation list like a TMZ intern on a power trip, and it's democracy with a doorman. It was like witnessing a wine snob discover that their favorite vintage is simply Box Merlot in a nice bottle. When Tomi arrived with receipts on Sunny's own contradictions, Sunny stumbled through side eyes and gripped her pearls so tightly you could practically hear them pleading for forgiveness. In less than 30 seconds, her confidence went from 100 to dial tone. After spending so many years on The View, you'd think Sunny would have at least thought of a contingency plan in case her arguments fall apart like a Dollar Tree umbrella during a hurricane. However, smugness is plan A. Louder smugness is plan B. What about plan C? It's only a commercial pause.
Why do you think you've resonated with so many people?
I think, in large part, I represent middle America. So you've got the two coasts, and those individuals seem to kind of just talk to each other. And then you've got all of middle America right there that's dying to have a voice. They don't really feel like they have one. They're not represented, beyond their communities. So I think they watch me and they say, well, she speaks like I do. She thinks like I do. She seems to maybe get it like I do. And I think that's why it's resonated. And also, I do something very different. There's not a whole lot of young conservative women out there. And so I provide that.
Now, let's talk about how Tomi called out Sunny's well-known habit of behaving like she's the spokeswoman for every marginalized group on the planet. This is someone who handles identity like it's a set of Pokemon cards. You gotta gather them all to win the debate. She opens off every argument by stacking her personal identity resume like it's the ultimate word in logic. Woman, Latina, lawyer, martyr, oracle, and honorary Harvard professor, whatever issue she just Googled. The irony? Sunny continuously criticizes others for being condescending, then delivers every one of her arguments in the tone of a dissatisfied grad school lecturer who just found out you mentioned Wikipedia. She's constantly saying, I just think we need to educate people, as if the rest of us learn politics from finger puppets and cereal boxes. And while we're at it, let's talk about Sunny's preoccupation with virtue, signaling like it's a full-time job with benefits. She's turned being performatively accurate into an Olympic-level sport. It's not just that she thinks she's right. She actually believes she's ethically superior. If you disagree with her, she acts like you must have some deep underlying defect that can only be remedied with a 4-minute tirade on daytime TV and a couple of New York Times citations.
We keep on talking about criminals and immigrants being criminals. And I just want people to understand what the facts are and the stats are, is that undocumented immigrants are much less likely to have committed crimes than American citizens. American citizens commit more crimes than anyone who is undocumented. I also want to make the point that an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal because he or she is undocumented. That is a civil offense. So to call people illegals is, in and of itself, I think, xenophobic.
But when Tomi flipped that mirror around, when she reminded Sonny that you can't claim to be the moral compass of a nation while picking and choosing when values matter, that's when the real show began. Sonny stammered, stuttered, and eventually fell back on her characteristic move, utilizing her personal hardship as a shield. Because in Sunnyland, if you're losing a debate, all you have to do is shout, "As a woman of color," and poof, accountability evaporates like a magician's rabbit. But Tomi didn't even flinch. She just kept tossing down contradiction after contradiction like receipts on a checkout belt. And it wasn't just Tomi's facts that made Sonny fall apart. It was the methodical, even surgical way she dismantled all that grandstanding. The layers of prefabricated fury Sonny brings to every conversation popped like a balloon in a porcupine factory. And seeing her fight to cling to her intellectual pride was the most unintentionally amusing reality program of the week.
If Democrats really want to die on the hill of bringing back plane loads of criminal, illegal alien gang members...
But you haven't proven that they're criminals.
Please.
That's the problem.
Be my guest.
Honestly, look, I will be the first one to say, if there is a criminal, if there's a gang member in this country, someone who has committed any crime, big or small, get him out, sure. I'll absolutely concede that. We don't need criminals in this country. But if you're talking about somebody who you don't know because you haven't afforded them due process, then you can't just make that claim.
But the fact remains, President Trump is not only securing our border, but he is deporting criminal, illegal aliens. And if Democrats want to stand in the way of that, and they want to tell their constituents, hey, vote for us in the midterms, vote for us in 2028, we'll make sure that the criminal aliens come back.
But here's the trouble with establishing a career on arrogant sound bites and hashtag activism. Eventually, someone's going to fact check you. And when it happens, you'd best have more than just eye rolls, buzzwords, and a library of facial expressions that scream, "I can't believe I have to explain this to you peasants." Sonny's whole demeanor feels like an overpriced TED Talk nobody asked for, overproduced, lackluster, and totally persuaded of its own brilliance. And while she's busy peering down from her moral penthouse, the foundation keeps crumbling every time she contradicts herself, shuts down alternative perspectives, or falls apart when someone doesn't play by her script. Afterward, her apologists try to spin it like she was ambushed or taken out of context, which is amusing, given that if anybody has mastered the art of the passive-aggressive ambush, it's Sonny herself. This is the same woman who essentially developed the term polite venom, the kind of tone where she says, "with all due respect," and then continues to respectfully tear your entire existence apart.
I have a question of my own. Do you lock your doors at home? At your residence, do you have a lock on your door? Do you use that lock?
I do. Yeah, I do.
You have an alarm?
And why is that? I mean, you lock your door because you want to know who's coming into your home. It's not because you hate the people outside, it's because you love the people inside. Well, that's what needs to be done with the United States of America. That's why we have a border. We have a right to know who's coming into our country and...
This time, no amount of polished scorn could save her. Sonny Hostin, the self-appointed intellectual heavyweight of daytime TV, got thoroughly brought down, and Tomi Lahren didn't even break a sweat. Tomi didn't need to yell, wave papers about, or invent new phrases merely to trend on X. All she had to do was symbolically hold up the Sonny Hostin mirror, the one that reflects every smug smirk and self-congratulatory head tilt, and let Sonny scorch herself into irrelevance. It was a masterclass in letting someone crumble under the weight of their own bloated ego. Let's be real, this wasn't some uncommon misstep in Sonny's normally immaculate performance. This was the ultimate conclusion of a slow-motion meltdown years in the making. Sonny has been collapsing under the burden of her own self-importance for so long. Someone really should have handed her a hard hat and a warning sign by now. Her political commentary has never really been about the issues. It's always been more about conveying how deeply she feels about them. Heavy on the she.
But what I would like to point out is that there is no correlation between undocumented people and a rise in crime. That's statistically accurate. Immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, are less likely to commit crimes in the United States. So this notion somehow that it's about national security.
Because every time Sunny opens her mouth with that classic preamble, I think what's important to understand is you can almost hear the drum roll of approaching nonsense. What follows is rarely a detailed analysis or a strong argument. Instead, it's frequently a rambling excursion through her sense of moral superiority, laced with enough buzzwords to make a Wordle player cry. She doesn't inform, she performs. And this time, the audience eventually stopped clapping .so when Tomi Lahren, never one to shy away from a clean takedown, simply let Sunny be Sunny. It was finished before it even began. There were no rising voices, no Olympic-level eye rolls, no dramatic exits or yelling matches that daytime TV generally relies on. Instead, it was one of those rare, silent demolitions, the kind where someone lights the match, walks away calmly, and watches the whole edifice collapse under the weight of its own weaknesses.